and spent a few months sort of getting caught up to speed on what we have, what we didn't have. But one of the things I did, and this is Mindy's idea, Mindy Munford, is she was hosting a cold case conference at the AG's office, and she had the idea of, well, we've got all these subject matter experts in one room, why don't we all sit down and go over what we have, and maybe we can get some ideas of how we can push this case further along. And they all agreed. I mean, I think half of them changed their flights to stay that afternoon. And we sat at a big conference table and we went over spreadsheets, chain of custody logs, evidence logs, pictures, and sort of brainstormed what we could maybe do, what do we have and what can we do with it. And so that was sort of the testing strategy moving forward, was that we met with these experts. It wasn't a set quarterly or whatever, every few weeks, months, whether it's in person or Teams or just texting, but there was always an agenda, there was updates. I mean, we sort of approached this a little bit differently. But during that time, we weren't able to get any new scientific advancements that broke the case open. We still excluded a lot of people. We sent things out for testing, but didn't pan out. However, in late June, the very end of June of 2025, I decided to revisit some of the evidence. One of the items I was interested in was the spent 380 shell cartridge casing that had been found in the floor drain. And there's now been, over the last few years, a technique that you can extract DNA from spent shell casings. It's gotten a pretty good success over the last couple of years. So I thought maybe that's a possibility. It was in the floor drain, probably not the greatest sample if it's in a floor drain, but let's look into it and see what we can do. And I wanted to make sure I could follow chain of custody and knew where this casing was. Do we have it? Does the state lab have it? Where is it? And so through the chain of custody, I saw that, yes, we still had possession of it, but also there was a note that it had been submitted in 1997. Later, I found out in 2007 as well, that in 1997, this casing had been submitted to an early ATF database called IBIS. And that was some of the first sort of ballistics comparison database that existed. So once you submit a casing into the system, it's no longer a candidate for DNA extraction, because the imaging software that you put it in, it's not sterile. So there's potential to get DNA from whatever last casing was put in there. So we knew DNA was out. But in talking to our task force with the ATF here, I mentioned that it had been put in 1997 and asked if that data rolled over to the new system, to NIBIN. I said, well, it should, but whether it did or not, you should resubmit it.
And can I stop you right there?
Mm-hmm.
This is based on the premise that when a bullet's fired from a gun, the casing's expelled, the casing's going to have markings on it. Is that right?
Correct.
And they're going to have markings that would show the type of gun that it was fired from?
Yes.
Or can?
It can. The more, I guess, precise way to tell what type of gun it was fired from was from the actual projectile, the bullet itself, not the spent casing. Because the bullet will have the grooves and markings. They're unique to making models.
And then the casings, though, may have individual characteristics that would be different than any other casing fired out of a different gun.
Correct. You can link casings fired from the same weapon based off of like firing pin and crimping and stuff like that. The microscopic indentations that are created that are unique to a gun.
Almost like a gun's unique DNA.
Correct. Like, so this database, the NIBIN system is kind of like a CODIS for spent casings. The ATF sergeant, I don't think he's here today, but he said, even if it had been submitted back then, do it again. It's not going to hurt, because it's not like DNA where every time you test it, you're depleting a source. The casings doesn't go away. So he said also, the software has gotten so much better over the last few years with NIBIN, almost doing like 3D modeling, that the precision of the software, these images, is getting hits on cases that previously did not. So we submitted it on the morning of July 2nd, 2025. And on the afternoon of July 2nd, 2025, Sergeant Riley called me and put me on a conference call with Melanie Rodriguez and said, well, there's been a hit. And they got a hit to an unsolved murder in Lexington, Kentucky of Linda Rutledge.
And can you describe the circumstances of that murder?
Yes, Linda was found murdered in her parents' business. It was a hearing aid store, and it was in a strip mall in Lexington, Kentucky. This was November of 1998, so 7 years after ours. And she was found in the back of the business. She had been shot in the head with the same .380, and she was found nude, and the building had been set on fire. The door was locked from the inside, and the perpetrator appeared to have exited the back and stole her car.
And had she been bound as well?
Actually, I don't think she was. Yeah, just her clothing was pretty much burned up. There wasn't any clothing left.
And then you all traveled to Kentucky, is that right?
Yes. So myself, Mindy Munford, and Sergeant Rodriguez, along with Detective Jednek, we reached out to the guys in Lexington and decided we should all meet up in person and go over our cases. So we went up there for, I think, 4 or 5 days. And we realized the crimes did share a similar MO and modus operandi. A lot of details were the same, and the same gun was used. But aside from that, we were looking at, can we find, is anybody in your case file and my case file, somebody you looked at that pops up both places? Any connection from Texas to the Kentucky case and vice versa, and we could find none. So we kind of left with more questions and answers. So we still didn't know who did. Both were unsolved, and we didn't have any common names in those boxes. So talking with Kentucky, they had, the Lexington Police Department, they had collected evidence for DNA testing, and so they had a testing strategy to move forward. Some things had never been tested before.
Was one of those things the sex assault kit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I spoke with their state lab, and I said, well, we don't have a CODIS profile, but we have a YSTR. Do you have a YSTR? And they said, no, but we can get one. We've got enough DNA, we can type one out for you. I said, great, so we can see if you can further evidence that we're talking about the same guy.
And is that because if they had done regular DNA testing, we only had a YSTR profile and we would not have been able to compare the two? Is
Correct.
That right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then I asked, well, does your state lab collect Y profiles as routine for like familial testing? Because that's some places do, some places don't. And they said, yeah, we do. And I asked if they could manually search their database. And because it's not an automated system where you just upload it and it gives, it continuously runs and like a CODIS. You have to sort of manually type it in, and then it's no longer there. So like even if the perpetrator was entered the next day, you wouldn't know. So it's only what's been collected so far. And they said, yeah, we can do, we do that. I said, well, can you do a manual search? I'm gonna send you my YSTR and you search manually. And that then led to, well, if I'm asking Kentucky to do this, why don't we ask everybody to do this? All the labs, the public labs in the country that collect YSTR data. Our CODIS administrator here in Austin sent out a request letter to all the labs in the country asking, if you collect YSTR data, will you manually search your database to our unknown? And this has been done once before. This has been done in 2019 and with 0 results. So we thought, let's do it. It's been several years. Let's do it again. There's more labs coming on board now collecting wide data. And so let's give this another shot. It's not something you want to ask a lab to do every week because you're asking them to stop what they're doing. We all know DNA labs around the country are backed up. So if you're continually asking them, there's a good chance they're going to stop responding to you. So we did that in, it was in August. We pushed that out in August. We had one lab, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division State DNA Lab, that returned quote hit or match. All the other labs in the country that were collecting Ys at the time returned 0 hits to our 25 marker profile.
And when you say match, it means that the 25 markers we had were the same as the 25 markers in the South Carolina YSTR profile.
Correct, yes. And their profile was from a solved sexual assault and murder that occurred in 1990 in Greenville, South Carolina. And they had solved that case and had a suspect. This was the first time anyone had asked South Carolina to do this, so it took a couple of weeks to get it done and verify for accuracy and things like that. But they got back to us and said, this is who the profile we have belongs to. And it's Robert Eugene Brashers.
And had Brashers ever been a suspect in yogurt before?
No,
You got these results?
he was nowhere in our case file. He was nowhere in a lot of case files, but found out later.
And most of his crimes were discovered after he died in 99, is that correct?
Yes. So I started collaborating with Tim Conroy there in Greenville, South Carolina, and he kind of went over the details of their case. There were some things that were different, but there were some similarities.
Can you talk about what the Greenville case, the facts of that?
Well, when we first talked that Friday evening that I got the letter, he said, he goes, "Your victim," and I said, "Victims." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, we have 4 little girls murdered, and because he didn't know the case at all. And he said, "Well, your little girls tied up with their own clothing," and gave me chills. Still does. And he said, "Yeah, that was the same in our case. Brashers tied up Genevieve Zatriki in her apartment, bound her with her pantyhose, strangled her, and sexually assaulted her, and then instead of didn't set the building on fire, but he put her in the bathtub and then turned the water on. And I guess to get rid of any potential evidence, and then fled the scene." So one of the things we did was I asked Lieutenant Conroy if the South Carolina lab still had biological evidence from Robert Brashers, and they did. So they sent some biological tissue to us, and we had Signature Science do a 1-to-1 comparison to our Y profile to make sure that it is the same, to do a direct, to confirm that, and also have Signature Science tell us the population statistics. How common is this Y? And it's not very common. There's some unique markers in there. And they estimated that it only occurs in about 0.12% of the population. So we thought we maybe, all right, we're on to something now.
So just to recap, although South Carolina had a YSTR profile, Signature Science got biological material from Brashers, created a new YSTR profile out of that to compare with the YSTR we had from yogurt.
Yes.
Okay.
Similar to if you get a hit in CODIS, you still go out and collect a sample from that offender to do a 1-to-1 to your crime scene.
Great.
So we started looking into Mr. Brasher's history, trying to figure out what he did and who he was, and found out that he was a known serial killer, known for a lot of violent offenses. The first, and also, when I talk about Brashers, I also have to, everything I say about him, I have to qualify something. Oh, sorry. One thing about Brashers, and I'll probably do it here a couple times, is that anytime we talk about him, I usually have to qualify it with that we know of, because there's still so much we don't know. But one of the things we do know is that his first known felony was in 1985. He attempted to make sexual advances on a woman. She resisted. He shot her, but she survived. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but he was granted parole in 1989.
So this is a chart showing kind of a timeline of his violent crimes that we know of. As you stated, there may be more. Let's briefly go through them. after he was paroled in '89, in 1990 was the South Carolina case.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that case, as you stated, the victim was bound, killed, and then placed in the bathtub to what we think covered his tracks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then we believe he committed yogurt in
Yes, ma'am.
91. We know he was arrested in 1991, and we'll get to that in a minute, but he was then incarcerated from 92 to 97.
Yes.
Right? And then about a month after he was released, he went to Memphis.
Yes.
Okay. What were the basic facts of the Memphis case?
He conducted a home invasion where 4 women were inside a residence and displayed a firearm and bound them all with different ligatures, and then sexually assaulted the youngest girl.
Okay. And it was 3 adult women and then the mother, including the mother of the 14-year-old, is that right?
Yes.
And they lived.
Yes, they all lived.
And we know that he was able to overtake all 4 by himself.
Yes.
And in their descriptions, he had a gun, they were scared, and he was able to make them tie themselves up and sexually assault the 14-year-old. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then in 1998, we have the Shearer murders, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. What were the facts of that one?
A man and his son had left briefly to run errands, and they were only gone for about 40 minutes. And when they arrived back at their home, he found his wife and daughter had been tied up and shot in the back of the head. And the youngest girl, Megan, had been sexually assaulted.
And she was 12 years old.
Yes.
And then that same day after he left the Shearer residence, he went to Dyersburg, Tennessee.
Yes. About 2 hours later, he attempted another home invasion in Tennessee. And fortunately, the woman was able to get the door closed. He did fire 1 round and shot her in the arm, but then fled the scene. And they were able to link, based off the description of him, they went further, investigated. The Missouri police and the Dyersburg police took the projectiles from both scenes and were able to confirm this was the same assailant.
Sort of how you were able to connect the yogurt shop casing with the Kentucky casing.
Yes.
And then that was in March of 98, and then we've got November of 98, Lexington.
Yes.
Okay. And as you described, that was a business that was set on fire.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then Brasher's committed suicide in January of 99.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to make you go through this chart. This was put together by Pam Mazak at the Texas Attorney General's office.
Yes. This is sort of an association chart of evidence and crimes that we know of.
Okay. And this demonstrates, I think, the complexity of the investigation and the amount of evidence that we have against Brasher's at this point.
Yes, this chart was a collaborative effort of local, state, and federal investigators over many, many years, including a whole lot in the last few months. But each piece of this puzzle is linked to Brasher's. So real quickly, Brasher's never paid for any of his crimes, except that one in Florida. He was clever. He was able to evade justice for many years. He would change his name. He had multiple aliases, birth certificates. He wrote an obituary for himself and published it in a couple of different papers. He was in multiple states. He was always traveling. He rarely, that we know of, committed a crime where he lived. And so we wanted to look at, well, he's looking pretty good for our case, but where was he in December of 1991? You know, was he in prison? You know, can we place him in Austin or Texas at all? So we here in Austin started researching Brasher's and trying to figure out if we can place him in connection with the yogurt shop. So remember, murders of these girls occurred on December 6, 1991. Well, we found out through record research that Robert Eugene Brashers was stopped less than 48 hours later leaving Texas. He was stopped at a border checkpoint going I-10 west out of the state near Las Cruces. And during this checkpoint, the Border Patrol agent discovered not only was he driving a stolen truck that had been reported stolen 9 days earlier out of Georgia, but he was in possession of a 380 AMT backup model with that serial number. Now the 380 AMT backup model was what ballistics reports said in all probability was the make and model of the gun used at the yogurt shop. So he's got the same make and model 48 hours later with that specific serial number that comes in important later. So he's charged with auto theft and felon in possession of a firearm. It seemingly was probably seemingly not important at the time, but the gun was released to his father at some point. There's no date when it was released to his father, but it's in the record that it was turned back over to his father.
And after he was initially stopped, he fled for about a mile and then stopped.
Yes, and then gave up.
Do you have any theories, and I know it's nothing we could be definitive about what happened in that mile?
My theory is that he knew he couldn't do anything about the 380, but if he was still in possession of a 22, they needed to get rid of it. There's really no reason to flee after a checkpoint and then stop a mile. If you're gonna flee, you keep going. It's very desolate. There's no artificial light out there, so if he threw a gun out the window, you wouldn't see it. And so that was our theory. We have no way to prove that.
And they never did an inventory of the other items, any other items in the car, is that right?
No, unfortunately, there was no inventory. The only inventory that was done was items missing because the truck was a construction vehicle, and so there was a lot of tools that were no longer there.
And there were items missing from the girls. Amy's brother's jacket was missing from yogurt, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but that was never recovered, and we don't know if it was in Brasher's truck because they never did an inventory.
Correct. There's no inventory. So, no. So we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. All we have is a Y profile, and there's limitations to Ys. They're good at excluding suspects from cases, but it's really hard to say definitively, or you can't really say definitively if it is that person, because they're not as discriminatory as a traditional autosomal DNA profile for like CODIS, or like, so you can have people with the same Y profiles. So he's looking pretty good. I mean, we could, if he was alive, we'd arrest him, but we got to be beyond probable cause here. He's dead, so we got to be at beyond reasonable doubt. So in September of 2025, we, in coordination with DNA Labs International, we submitted some more items for additional DNA testing. And while these items have been screened previously or tested previously, we thought, technology's gotten better. We don't think we'll get enough DNA for a full CODIS profile, but it's possible we could get enough DNA to do a one-to-one direct comparison to Brasher's, and because that's a different threshold. The quality and quantity, you can have less. So, male DNA was found on the fingernails of Amy Ayers, on her left fingernail clippings that had been taken at autopsy, and we were able to directly compare those to Robert Brasher's, and the DNA was the same.
And sorry, just to be clear, the 4 were excluded from that sample as well?
Yes, we've done additional testing since, and everything we've tested has excluded them as well. So now we have his DNA, his autosomal DNA, and his Y profile at the crime scene. And we believe, and it's my opinion, that the gun that he was stopped with 2 days later was the gun that was used to kill Amy Ayers. He was released from prison in 1997. His dad was able to get the pistol back. Then we have the Lexington, Kentucky murder in 1998, which was an AMT backup model, and it's the same gun used in the yoga shop. Then a month later, or 2 months later, he commits suicide with an AMT backup model, a .380 caliber pistol, and it's the same handgun he was stopped with on I-10. We know that by the serial number.
And when he committed suicide, he'd also been in possession of a 9mm?
Yes, he had 2 guns at that time, and he threw the 9mm out the window and chose the less powerful gun. And we know why now, that this gun was his prize, that he shot himself with that .380.
And it took him 6 days to die.
Yes.
You've said before that confessions and the science both can't be true. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. For example, in the confessions, there's various narratives of some of the 4 being in possession of the .380 after yogurt shop.
Correct.
Is it your opinion that that's possible based on what you know about the .380?
Based on that last slide, no, that is not possible.
In the confessions, there's no mention of an unknown male being part of the crime. Based on what you know about the DNA, is that possible?
No, the DNA points to one man.
And in the confessions, there were confessions to the sexual assaults?
Yes.
Based on what you know about the exclusions of the 4 from the vaginal swabs, is that possible?
No. Just a little bit more about him, and then we'll be done with Brasher's, hopefully, for a while. The MO, he's documented to carry more than 1 gun at a time. He ties up his victims, sometimes with their own clothing. He sexually assaults young females. He often shoots them in the back of the head. And in Kentucky, we know it was the same gun, similar details, and now, since Kentucky has worked their case, they have confirmed with DNA that Robert Eugene Brasher's is a suspect in that, and then in their murder of Linda Rutledge. So, based on the DNA, ballistics, and modus operandi evidence, it is my conclusion that the deaths of Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, and Sarah Harbison were committed by Robert Eugene Brashears. Based on that, I further conclude that Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, Forrest Wilburn, and Maurice Scott did not commit these murders. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective Jackson, and thank you for your investigation and hard work. I have no further questions.
Do the attorneys for the exonerees have any questions of this witness?
I have no questions, Your Honor. Thank you very much. No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Detective, you may step down.
Thank you.
And does the state of Texas have any other witnesses they wish to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, the state called Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis.
Who's always swear the testimony which you will give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please have a seat on the witness stand.
Thank you, Chief Davis.
Thank you.
You just listened to the testimony of Detective Jackson.
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware of the investigation and his conclusion that Robert Brasher's committed the yogurt shop murders.
I am.
And you're aware that your cold case unit partnered with the Texas Attorney General's office in this investigation,
Yes.
and that they also conclude that Robert Brasher's committed the murders.
Yes.
Is that the position of the Austin Police Department?
The position of the Austin Police Department is Robert Brashears is responsible for these murders.
Okay. Is it also your position that Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, Forrest Welburn and Robert Springsteen are innocent?
That is the position of the Austin Police Department.
And do you support their exonerations today?
I do support these exonerations.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do attorneys for the exonerees have any questions?
We have no questions, Your Honor. No questions, Your Honor?
Thank you.
Thank you,
may
Judge.
Step down. At this time, we're going to take a mid-morning break. The court will be in recess for 15 minutes, and we will resume this hearing at the conclusion of the break.
Yep. Still got 30 minutes left on the first one. So,
Okay, bye.
I'm gonna 10-1, I guess.
Yeah, I found what you got.
All right.
Opera.
Yep. It's still rolling. I would just keep.
Copy.
Good. How are you?
We're still in here for the next couple hours.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you doing on media though?
I got like 30 minutes left on my first card, 27 minutes, and 140 on the second card.
You know, I didn't make sure that it was set to automatic rollover.
Okay.
Just
I can stop my truck roll too. They would have an option to not automatic.
this one might not actually have that because that would be in that menu. Water?
Yeah, take a water.
What's it? Goldfish? Like a treat?
Yeah, for snacks. Order that. Which one I can look out for?
That's good. The guy in front of me, for sure, is also like a stories. I'm actually going to ask Justin to go. Maybe help him.
Okay, we are back on the record. And does the state have any more witnesses they wish to call?
No, Your Honor, the state does.
Okay. And would the exonerees like to call any witnesses?
Yes, all the previous statements from Council Roberts.
Okay. Do you have a microphone on the table?
I'm under.
Oh, okay.
Statement of Robert Springsteen IV. I, Robert Springsteen IV, do hereby provide this written statement on the 19th day of February 2026 to the Honorable Dana Blasey, presiding judge of the 167th District Court, as follows. On or about October 6, 1999, at the age of 24, I was wrongfully arrested and charged for the alleged involvement in the December 6, 1991 murders of 4 innocent girls, Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, and Jennifer and Sarah Harbison at the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop in North Austin, Travis County, Texas. From the date of my arrest, I adamantly asserted that I was innocent, which only fell on deaf ears due to a coerced confession with no actual evidence of my involvement. My life from that moment of being arrested was turned into chaos and uncertainty after being sentenced to death and placed on death row as an innocent man accused of such a heinous crime I allegedly committed when I was barely 17 years old. After being released in 2009, I have been persecuted every single day by the public and law enforcement, continually being seen as an alleged murderer in their eyes. I have lived every single day since October the 6th, 1999, being seen as a monster for something I did not do. I have suffered 27 years of persecution, repeated harassment, and of trying to exist and survive in this world, which has been a constant daily struggle. 10 of those 27 years being in prison and on death row, kept in solitary confinement with only 1 hour a day to be out of my cell, all while being innocent. Now, new DNA and ballistic evidence affirms my actual innocence and that Robert Eugene Brashears was the sole perpetrator. I pray this court will find that no credible evidence exists against me by granting a full exoneration and deem me actually innocent of the crime wrongfully accused of 27 years ago. Sincerely, Robert Springsteen IV.
This is the statement of Forrest Brooke Welborn to this honorable court. My name is Forrest Brooke Welborn. Because of the many emotions that I have today, I've asked my lawyer to read my statement. Only 4 weeks after these 4 girls were killed on December 6, 1991, I was made a suspect in what has become known as the Austin Yogurt Shop murders. Almost 8 years later, on October 6, 1999, I was arrested and charged with killing these 4 girls. Before I talk about the effect these accusations have had on my life, I have to say that I feel so sorry for the families of the victims of this horrible crime. It must be a terrible thing to lose a child, especially in such an awful way. I wish them peace and a chance for closure now that the true killer has been identified. From the very beginning, and for almost 35 years since I was first accused of this crime, I have always maintained my innocence. I have never claimed or stated that I was involved in the murders in any way, because I wasn't. I have never said that Maurice or Michael or Robert committed the murders. The testimony given by Detective Dan Jackson here in court today conclusively shows that I am innocent of this crime. His testimony also shows that Maurice, Michael, and Robert are innocent of the crime. Detective Jackson's testimony proves that I have always told the truth. When the murders happened, I was 15 years old. At that time, I had only one person who I would call a friend. That was Maurice Pierce. The Austin Police Department detectives put so much pressure on Maurice to confess, more pressure than Maurice could handle. So the person I thought was my best friend told the APD detectives that I was involved in this crime. I believe that Maurice said this just so the APD detectives would let up on him. I believe Maurice was scared to death. The APD detectives made my best friend implicate me in the sadist crime, and I lost the one friend that I had. Despite being innocent of this crime and having nothing whatsoever to do with it, my life was dramatically changed long before I was arrested in 1999. Once I was made a suspect in 1992, I was unable to continue going to school. I tried twice to complete the 8th grade, but was unable to continue attending school because of the things that people said to me and about me and how they treated me because they believed that I was one of the killers. Because I was made a suspect in these murders, I lost the opportunity to obtain an education. I also lost the opportunity to have a normal social life. As soon as someone knew that I was accused of this crime, they would stop talking to me and alienate me. Some people have even become hostile toward me, believing that the accusations against me were true. Because I was accused of this crime, I lost the opportunity to have a relationship or start a family of my own. The relationships I've had over the years have maybe lasted 6 months at the most. Not only did I lose the opportunity to get an education or have any kind of a social life, I have also been frequently harassed by law enforcement officers, especially in Travis County and Caldwell County. Not long after the murders happened, APD detectives would pick me up as I was walking to school in order to interrogate me and try to convince me that I was guilty of a crime I had nothing to do with. I was just a 15-year-old kid when I was first accused. I had no idea what rights I had. The APD detectives knew I was a minor, but didn't tell me I had the right to have my parents and a lawyer present when they questioned me. Even though they knew or should have known not to question me without my parents or a lawyer present, they did anyway. They knew that because I was a child, I would comply with their demands and answer their questions. On one instance, APD detectives even took me to the burned remains of the yogurt shop and tried to convince me to confess that I committed the crime. They knew or should have known that their actions were violations of my civil rights. They knew or should have known that their actions were wrong. Through the 35 years since I first was accused of these crimes, harassment by law enforcement became my norm. On most occasions, for example, when I've been pulled over, usually for no reason or a minor traffic offense, I've been asked to remain in my vehicle by the officer pulling me over so the officer could obtain backup. When the backup officer would arrive, both officers would typically approach my vehicle with weapons drawn. In addition to being pulled over for no reason, I've been wrongfully detained and beaten by police officers on numerous occasions. After having to quit school, I had to find a way to make a living. I enjoy working on cars and motorcycles, so I started a repair shop in Lockhart. But like the law enforcement officers in Travis County, the Lockhart police seemed to believe that because of the accusations against me, they were authorized to harass me, and they did. It was commonplace when I lived in Lockhart to be pulled over by law enforcement almost once a week. I was periodically arrested on no evidence and incarcerated even though the law enforcement officers knew or should have known that my conduct was not criminal. As you can imagine, it was impossible to develop a good reputation as a businessman when I was being arrested on a regular basis. I tried to develop my repair shop at 2 locations in Lockhart. My efforts ended when I was arrested in 1999 after formal charges were made against me by the Travis County District Attorney's Office. On the day of my arrest, I was taken from my place of business without even being given the opportunity to lock the doors to my shop. By the time my family was able to raise the bond to get me out of jail and I was able to get back to my shop, all my tools had been stolen. Over the last 35 years, I've tried different jobs. Because of the accusations against me, I found it difficult to keep jobs because of my undeserved reputation. So I've tried to find jobs where I work for myself. When I could not find work, I've had to live on the streets or out of my car. I've had to go my entire life being treated as a guilty murderer by the public and by law enforcement. I'm thankful that today I'll be declared innocent of a crime I had nothing to do with. Despite the fact that actual murder has been identified and that there's no support or evidence to support the belief, unfortunately, in the minds of some, I will always be thought of as a murderer. This is wrong, but it's the life that I have to live. In closing, I want to thank Detective Jackson for solving this crime. I hope that the work in solving this crime brings peace to the families of the girls. I'm hopeful that being declared innocent of this crime today brings peace to me too. Thank you.
Mr. Goodson, do you have a witness you would like to call? Okay. Okay, please call your witness. Ms. Shipman, please come forward. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony which you may give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please have a seat on the witness stand.
I'm Sharon Shipman. Forrest Webburn is my youngest son, my youngest child. First, I want to thank DA Jose Garza and Detective Dan Jackson for following through to the resolution of this case. Also want to thank the Innocence Project of Texas, especially Michael Ware, and attorney Steve Goodson for their support and assistance in this process of legal innocence and exoneration. Additionally, Robert Eisenhower Ramirez, may he rest in peace, and Linda Eisenhower Ramirez, who were God's blessings to us after Forrest's arrest in 1999. And a thank you to all the loyal family and friends who stood by us through all these years. This nightmare should have never happened. These young girls should have never lost their lives. The nightmare for my son Forrest and our family should have never happened either. Forrest never confessed to this crime, as you've heard, nor did he say he knew others who were involved. While he wasn't put through a legal trial or convicted in court, he was harmed by the interrogations, the arrest, 2 months in jail, and the certification hearings. He has suffered immensely for 34 years, not only from the policing and legal system, but also because he was convicted by much of the public and media. I'm so proud of Forrest for never wavering on his innocence in this horrible crime, even when he was often pressured to save himself by confessing. He was offered a plea deal by the assistant DA if he would tell them what they needed to hear. Not the truth, but what they needed to hear. His dad and I were in the room when that offer was made, but later in court it was denied that a plea offer was ever given him. Forrest was 15 when first questioned in this case. He was also approached by detectives parked on the street as he walked to school, told to get in and go for a ride. He was questioned then, still 15 years old, without his parents' knowledge. Being so young, he didn't know he could decline. He was also devastated about these murders, afraid of what had happened in his neighborhood to girls his age and some from his school. And he wanted to be helpful. He knew he had nothing to do with it, so thought it could only help to cooperate. But from that moment, his life changed. Over many years, detectives subjected Forrest and his family to pressure, insisting we say that he confessed and that he was involved. It was heartbreaking, frustrating, and downright scary to see Forrest suffer for the rest of childhood and his entire adult life. I could feel his anxiety, depression, stress, and anger, and it was hard for him to trust anyone. These emotions trickled down to all his relationships throughout these 34 years, affecting every aspect of his life. He constantly had strangers approach him about the case, most often unpleasant encounters. He also lost relationships and friendships over the years. The knowledge that Much of the public and even some extended family and friends believed the story that he was involved weighed heavy on all of us. When arrested, Forrest was issued a $1 million bond. He called me later that day and asked me to please bond him out, that he couldn't stay there. It broke my heart to remind him how much the bond was and that there was no way I could get the money to get him out. He called me as often as possible from jail, short, heart-wrenching calls. I wrote to him daily, trying to keep his spirits up by telling him that tons of people were praying for him. After the arrest, I had constant worry and fear. At one point, I started having nightmares, sometimes about the investigating detectives, sometimes about mobs coming to my house to lynch me. I lost a lot of sleep during this scary time. It seemed so real, and I never knew what would come next when I tried to sleep. My privacy was invaded, and I felt my safety at risk. I was married when Forrest was arrested, but the stress and emotions were too much. We separated and later divorced. I ended up taking a second job to pay the bills and continued working 2 jobs for 18 years. What kept me going were prayers, family, especially my daughter, India, my other son, Eric, my sister, Donna, and my mom, Charlotte. I persevered knowing that I needed to be strong for Forrest and his son, my grandson. But it took a heavy toll on my health, my well-being, and my relationships. Forrest experienced betrayal of having his tools stolen from his shop when he was in jail, causing him to have to close the business. He worked on cars from his house for anyone who was willing to still do business with him. Bills still had to be paid. I've seen him do any kind of work he could think of just to make money to live. He drove an 18-wheeler for a short time. He worked for any type of construction. I've seen him struggle so much. For a time, he was homeless, sleeping in his car, even in cold winter. He moved to Lubbock and then Ohio to try to make a new start, but neither worked out long-term away from the support of his family. He's tried hard to make a life for himself, usually working for himself, a lonely life. This case just never would go away, though, and that reduced his opportunities for employment and impacted working conditions. I'm so proud that he has never given up under these hardships. Forrest and his sister, my daughter India, were very close. Her entire adult life was haunted by the false accusations against her brother and worries about what could happen to him. She was in nursing school when he was arrested. She heard someone say, "Did you see they arrested Jesus?" Because Forrest had long hair back then. And then the whispers and glances started. Under that public scrutiny and fear for her brother's life, she had a breakdown. She pulled out of school just weeks before she would become a registered nurse, never returning to nursing school. She, like me, constantly worried about something happening to him legally or as a vigilant act of vengeance. Her concerns for Forrest were very real and affected her deeply. We, especially Forrest in India, felt someone was watching and following him for years. And just 6 years ago, even after the DNA test showed no links to the boys, he was approached by detectives as he made his daily stop for a breakfast taco and a Monster drink. They called him over to their car, the detectives did, to discuss the yogurt shop case. During that time, India was telling us someone was watching the house. Police records confirmed she was right. When Maurice was killed, the fear was even stronger. Forrest told me he was routinely being pulled over by officers for no reason, sometimes once a week. He called me and said, "Mama, they're trying to Maurice me." I saw for myself the harassment he was experiencing when one day we had to switch vehicles so he could work on mine. His car had dark tinted windows. As I drove from his house to mine, I was pulled over without cause. I waited until the officer got to the door before rolling down the window. The look of shock on his face when he saw who was driving told me everything Forrest said was true. The officer fumbled trying to find a bogus reason for stopping me. Over the years, detectives and media showed up unannounced at Forrest's home, his place of business, and his dad's house. Between detectives, media, and other people reacting to media reports, it just never stopped being an oppressive part of our lives. I'm grateful every day that his calm kept him alive through this persecution. How different could our lives have been without these false accusations, arrests, public suspicion, and being stalked by detectives and media? How much better would Forrest's life be today without these struggles and stress his entire adult life? How much better would his sister, brothers, son, and parents' lives have been without the endured worry for our loved one for 34 years? There are so many victims, so many lives harmed for so long. Of course, we wanted these murders to be solved, but not at the lifelong expense of innocent lives. On August 5th of last year, as my daughter India was dying from brain cancer, she privately told me that when she got to heaven, she was going to find out who the killer was, and she would make sure we and everyone knew who it was, so Forrest's name would finally be cleared. She passed away on September 14th. On September 29th, we got the news that DNA had identified the man who truly committed the murders. India kept her promise to us from heaven, our sweet angel, always looking out for her baby brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, I'd like to call Michael James Scott.
Please come forward, Mr. Scott. Please have a seat on the witness stand. Please proceed.
My name is Michael James Scott. On December 6, 1999, when the yogurt shop murders occurred, I was 17 years old. I did not commit those crimes. I had no involvement in them, and I have maintained my innocence every day since. 8 years later, on October 6th, 8 years, October 6th of 1999, when I was 25 years old, I was accused, tried, and wrongfully convicted. I was sentenced to life in prison. On June 6, 2007, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned that wrongful conviction due to serious constitutional violations. While I was awaiting a new trial, DNA testing on March 18, 2008 excluded me and the other wrongfully accused individuals in this case. Today, more than 26 years later, modern forensic science again conclusively confirms that what I have always maintained. I had nothing to do with these crimes. The evidence identifies Robert Eugene Brashear, a known serial killer, and is the sole person responsible. He is someone I've never met. I lost my family, I lost my youth, lost my early adulthood. My daughter was just 3 years old when I was arrested. We had just celebrated our first wedding anniversary. I lost the chance to build a life with my family. When I was finally released, the relationship I once had with my wife just wasn't there. That ultimately led to our divorce. For decades, I have carried the burden of wrongful conviction. Every day I have carried the weight of a crime I did not commit. No court ruling can return the years and the love that were taken from me, but it can acknowledge the truth. I am not guilty. Your Honor, I respectfully ask the court to formally recognize my innocence and allow the record to reflect the evidence now confirms that I did not commit these crimes.
Michael,
Thank you for your time, ma'am.
I'm going to ask you a few questions about some exhibits. Is that going to be okay?
Sure.
I'm going to have to do it with the judge's permission from that little machine, and the deputy's going to help me. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you, at least try to show you, what's been marked and admitted in this case as exhibit number 9. Can you tell us who was in the picture?
That's myself. I guess I was 16 years old. I was.
What's a 16-year-old doing?
I'm getting ready to go to probably a concert, an orchestra concert that I would perform. I was in orchestra in school, so I was probably dressed up to go perform.
About 16 years?
I think so.
I'll show you what's been marked and admitted in this case as exhibit number 10. Could you tell us who that
That's
young dapper man is?
that was our wedding. 98. That's Grandma Scott,
Which one's Grandma Scott?
the lady in blue. I want to say Grandma Stark, but I'm not sure that's 100% right.
Grace Stark.
That's Grace Stark, next to Janine. Yeah. Yes, she is. She's sitting in the audience with us. No.
And this is an interesting picture.
That is a collage of, at the time, all the pictures of Jasmine. And that's actually taken in the library of, you're hung on the, that's a lot of pictures year to year of Jasmine. And then that's a picture taken of me, Jasmine, and Janine in the Ramsey 1 library. That's the prison library. That's where we had contact. It's the only place we could have contact visitations. So, I mean, that's where we had visitation.
Mike, you said that you've been incarcerated for about 12 and a half years.
Something like that.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit C in the case. Now, I showed this to you.
I believe, yes, sir, you have.
What does that not mean? Tell us.
That was the letter submitted to TDC, the TDCJ on how much time, I believe. What occurred. That's the basic synopsis of my time spent inside, I believe.
And I'm going to show you now Exhibit 8. Now, Exhibit 8 is a compilation of documents.
It's upside down, please.
Exhibit 8. You remember going over this?
Yeah, you showed me this about 2 weeks ago. That's part of your intake for Gurney, I would guess. That's my intake paperwork.
And it shows all these pages attached to Exhibit A.
Yeah,
What is it telling us?
all the places that I spent time in, all the units that I traveled to.
So you're sure about the amount of time you were incarcerated?
As far as those documentations have listed, yes.
No further questions. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
You may,
Thank you, ma'am.
you may step in. Mr. Diaz, do you have any other witnesses that you would like to call?
Your Honor, at this time, on behalf of Mike Scott, I would like to call Phil Scott, who is Mike Scott's father.
Please come forward.
We'll get there.
And, Mr. Scott, you can just stand right there, but would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony which you may give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Please have a seat on the witness stand.
I have a short Your Honor. My name is Phil Scott. Michael Scott is my son. My son was 17 years old on December the 6th, 1991, and that's a minor. When these occurred, he was a minor. I knew then, and I know now, that he had nothing to do with these crimes, nothing. From the time he was charged, through his convictions, his years in prison, the loss of his best friend, and the prolonged isolation that our family has gone through, we have never wavered in the belief of his innocence. As a father and a veteran, watching your son lose his youth and freedom for something he did not do is something that no parent should ever have to experience. We appreciate the fact that the court will now look at the truth and establish to all that Michael had nothing to do with this. These 4 kids had nothing to do with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Yep.
Your Honor, at this time, on behalf of Michael Scott, I call Lisa McLean. Mike's mother.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony which you may give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, please have a seat on the witness stand.
My name is Lisa McLean. I'm Michael's mother. In December 1991, Austin was shattered by the devastating news of the yogurt shop murders. At the time, Mike was 17 years old, attending high school. He went to McCallum High School and just living his teenage life. In October 1999, my world was shattered when my son was arrested for the murders. I knew then, as I've always known, he did not commit the crimes he was accused of. The years that Michael was incarcerated took a heavy toll on him and our family. There were times when I wasn't sure that we were all going to make it through this living nightmare. It was just, even though we knew the truth, it was hard showing that truth to the courts and proving it to them. Today, thank you very much, scientific evidence has done that. I want to thank the court for recognizing my son's innocence and for allowing this matter to be resolved. Thank you, Your Honor.
Lisa, before you step down, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Where did you come in from to testify here today? Where did you come in?
I live in Brady, Texas.
Came from Brady, Texas?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I pass the witness, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, on behalf of Mike Scott, I would call Debbie Scott his stepmother, and Debbie is D-E-B-I.
You solemnly swear the testimony which you may give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please have a seat on the witness stand.
Your Honor, my name is Debbie Scott, and I'm Michael's stepmom. And I've known Michael as a member of our family for many years, including during the time of his arrest, trial, and incarceration. I never had been given reason to believe that he committed these crimes, and our family has always maintained his innocence, even when we couldn't yet prove it. But the confirmation of the forensic evidence now gives us a clarity and finality of something that our family has waited so long to see. And I thank the court to now reflect the truth. Michael is innocent. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Debbie. Your Honor, on behalf of Mike Scott, at this time, I would like to call Janine Casey. That's Mike Scott's former spouse. We love her very much.
You solemnly swear the testimony which you may give in this case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please have a seat.
My name is Janine Casey. I am Michael Scott's former wife. Michael and I were married at the time of his arrest. Through his trial, conviction, and incarceration, and through his appeals, I never believed he or any of these boys committed this crime. His claims of innocence never changed in all of the years that I have known him. The wrongful conviction
has affected every aspect of our lives over many years, causing significant emotional and financial strain. The sudden absence of her father disrupted our daughter's emotional stability, her daily routine, and undermined her sense of security and consistency. I appreciate the forensic evidence now establishes what I have known all along, and hope that the court will set the record straight to accurately reflect Michael's innocence. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Janine. Your Honor, we have no further witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ware, do you wish to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Kimberly Pierce.
Mr. Woodson, can you please solemnly swear the testimony that you will give in this case now and before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Ware, make sure that you got the mic so that we can hear you.
Good.
Yes, you may proceed.
Please introduce yourself and
Yes.
you have something you'd like to read.
Yes. I'm Kimberly Pierce, Maurice's wife, and we were together in '91 as well, all the way to his death. Death by cop is not how I envisioned my husband's life ending. Maurice and I thought we would grow old together. Instead, our future was stolen by the Austin Police Department and a system that chose a narrative over the truth. Maurice's family moved from Houston to Austin for a better place to raise their children. I wish it would have been the safer place they'd hoped for. Instead, it was the worst thing that would have happened to Maurice and would ultimately lead to his death. As teenagers, just 15 and 16 years old, we were questioned by APD without our parents' knowledge or an attorney present. Maurice was held for 48 hours and subjected to aggressive interrogation tactics conducted by Hector Polanco, including being shown graphic photos of the girls and falsely being told that the gun he had was the murder weapon. I was only questioned after showing up at the police station when being told they were supposedly looking for me. Their first attempt to manipulate me included telling me Maurice was in a cult. When that didn't work, they told me he was visiting one of the girls at the yogurt shop that night trying to make me jealous. And right then I knew this was an interrogation full of deception. I was with Maurice from 7:30 until 11:15 that Friday night on December 6, 1991. I was his alibi, and that alibi would prove to be very inconvenient for their narrative, leading to their constant harassment to change my statement. APD even went as far as coming to my job after his death to try and have me change my statement and the timeline. Maurice was cleared in 1991 and let go. However, in 1998, Detective Paul Johnson honed in on Maurice for a reason I have yet to understand. Our alibi witnesses were ignored. His sister and others who could have corroborated our whereabouts that night were never questioned. The tactics remained the same, aggressive. The evidence was ignored, and the narrative of 4 troubled boys served as the focus. Maurice tried to prove his innocence by willingly giving DNA, taking lie detector tests, and even undergoing hypnosis with APD. He spoke to them several times willingly. Maurice was targeted, taunted, and portrayed as a monster and a murderer despite clear evidence that did not support those claims. His DNA did not match,
The gun did not match, and there was no evidence tying him to the crime. Yet, APD and the district attorney pursued him relentlessly, determined to make him pay for something they knew he did not do. In 2003, District Attorney Ronnie Earl held a press conference stating that due to a lack of evidence, Maurice was being released. At that point, he'd spent 3.5 years in jail and more than 2 years in solitary confinement. It was only after pleading with the warden that he'd finally be allowed to take his chances in general population so he could go outside to feel the sun on his skin. Maurice carried his written dismissal with him at all times, even though it showed capital murder pending further investigation. The stigma of being accused of these murders followed him everywhere. They were going to persecute him in any way possible, at every traffic stop, by showing up at his job, by showing up at my job, by following him, and by coming to our house several times to question him as a witness. His record made it extremely hard to gain employment or even be added onto a lease. We had to explain his situation and proclaim his innocence over and over again. Later, in 2009, District Attorney Rosemary Lindbergh said that new DNA evidence did not mean the confessions were false, even though the DNA didn't match any of the 4 boys. They were all still under investigation for the yogurt shop murders. It's shocking to learn how the real killer was stopped in El Paso and detained only 2 days later with the actual murder weapon. How was this missed? APD's careless handling of this case put Maurice in a position that tore him and our family apart. Our daughter lost her father and her innocence, and we have never been the same. Our weekends and holidays were spent visiting Maurice, separated by plexiglass. We attended countless court proceedings that should never have existed. I watched my husband plead for someone, anyone, to hear him and call into question the lack of evidence. The fact is, you're guilty until proven innocent, and if the right people accuse you, your guilt is assumed. This was not the work of a serial killer. This was the result of the Austin Police Department's institutional failure and abuse of power. There is nothing the APD can do to repair what they chose to break, but there must be accountability. Independent oversight, reinvestigation of cases handled by those involved, and systemic reform to ensure that no other family endures this kind of unnecessary loss. Maurice never deserved any of this. He deserved life, dignity, and justice. He deserved his innocence. I am truly sorry this horrific crime happened to the girls and their families. I am grateful the case is finally solved and Maurice's name is cleared. But unfortunately, he did not live to see it. Thank you. Yes. It's Maurice, our daughter, and me. This is at her wedding in June of 2010. Here, before he was arrested, I want to say probably the year before, in 98, a family portrait we had taken. Mm-hmm.
phrase most often associated with justice. The principle meant to anchor the system is innocent until proven guilty. But for my father and 3 of his peers, that principle did not exist. From the very beginning, the presumption was not innocence, it was guilt. Guilty until proven innocent. In 1991, my father was a shy 16-year-old boy who loved anything automotive. He was smitten with a girl he met in PE class, my mom, and spent most of his time tinkering on cars. He had a natural gift for it, and there was nothing he couldn't figure out how to fix. And that's exactly who he was. That's exactly who he was when someone needed help. If life knocked you down, he sat beside you until you found your footing again. He would spend hours holding space with you, talking about everything and nothing. He knew how to be present. He knew how to make people feel seen. In his own quiet way. He knew how to fix more than just cars. He knew how to steady the hard emotions life threw your way. That simple teenage life quickly shattered in December of 1991 when he sat in a room across from a detective named Hector Blanco. For 2 days and nights, his family had no idea where he was. For hours, there was no proper record of what occurred. Graphic crime scene photos from one of Texas's most horrific crimes were passed around carelessly, shown to a frightened teenager who was lied to and manipulated into believing the gun he had access to was the gun used. Inside that room, there was no evidence, only a detective and a narrative. A narrative so completely false, it feels evil. It's this story of a boy who was a troublemaker, a magnetic leader with disciples, and later a story of a ringleader and a mastermind. Those words, ringleader and mastermind, used to float around in my head as a little girl, as I tried to grasp what was happening in my world. I learned at a very young age that the very institution meant to serve and protect was capable of evil, capable of lies, and not just harmless human error, but intentional corruption and deception. Recently, I sat with an attorney who described my father standing before the judge in 1999, saying he would give them whatever they needed to clear his name. And the attorney stopped him. He told my father he could not allow him to do that, not because he was guilty, but because the system was dangerous. Because any evidence, any test, any DNA could be taken and bent to fit the story they had already decided to tell. What does that say about justice? What does it say when an attorney knows openly and plainly that the truth is not safe in the hands of the very system meant to protect it? What does it say when an innocent man must be warned that cooperation could be used as a weapon against him? That is how broken this system is. That is how deeply the corruption runs. My father would be hogtied in his front yard on October 6th of 1999. Then he went against the advice of his own lawyer and voluntarily provided his DNA, took a lie detector test, and even agreed to hypnosis, all to prove his innocence. From 1999 2003. Despite a complete lack of evidence and repeated proof of his innocence, his alibi, his DNA, a past polygraph, and hypnosis, he was forced to spend more than 3 years in a concrete box. More than 2 of those years were spent in solitary confinement, locked alone for 23 hours a day. Those years were so dark, but he could barely speak of them afterwards. I have spent my life wondering what kind of suffering drives a strong and good man to say he would rather die than ever return to such a place. After his release in 2003, the harassment did not stop. Police followed him, watched him, treated him as a suspect in perpetuity. I witnessed it as his daughter, but those stories are for another day. Let me be clear, this is not the work of a single monster. This is not one moment of evil. This was the result of a justice system that actively hunted my father, harassed him, twisted facts to fit a narrative, and tried to force a confession to support a story they had already decided to tell. It was the result of officials who were never questioned, never checked, and never held to the standards they swore to uphold. A system that was created to protect the innocent instead became the very thing that destroyed him. For my daddy, it was a nightmare he could not escape. A traffic stop because my father rolled through a stop sign turned into what felt like an entire police force flooding a neighborhood, searching for an unarmed man who fled on foot, who fled from pure terror and severe PTSD from what he endured for years at the hands of this broken institution. I've yet to hear that dispatch. Were they searching for a man who rolled through a stop sign and fled? Or were they searching for a man named Maurice Pierce? What I have heard and seen, I call into question. That night, I had to listen to my daddy's worst fear come true. And then I had to listen to him stop talking to me. What I would come to realize was him taking his last breath. My world grew darker that night. I lost my anchor, my soft landing, my home. The pursuit would have never stopped. People wanted to see him suffer. People wanted to see him die because of a narrative created by detectives with no evidence. Alibis were inconvenient, evidence was irrelevant, and narratives reigned over all. The world grew darker for me the moment APD took my innocent father into custody. And again, when I saw him chained for the first time behind glass. And again, when I saw him in a courtroom for the first time. And again, when I hugged him in a small room with chains on his feet after years of only touching glass. And again, when a cop forced me inside as he proceeded to harass my father and throw him on top of his car. and again and again and again until the last time. My world didn't just alter, it completely shattered. To listen to the sounds of my daddy, someone I completely love and adore, live his absolute worst fear, and then to share those last moments with him unknowingly, it's completely shattered me. This was not justice. This was institutional failure. And the cost of that failure was my father's life, his dignity, and his future. My father paid the price. I do not get to see my father live in a world where everyone finally knows what he had been saying all along, that he was innocent. I do not get to see his relief. I do not get to see his peace. To the families of Eliza, Amy, and Sarah and Jennifer, my heart breaks for you and your girls. My father's heart broke for you and your girls. There are no words I can offer, but I will hold you in my prayers for the rest of my days. To the Austin Police Department, the DA's office, and to Paul Johnson, your tunnel vision stole my daddy's future. You took his peace, his freedom, his dignity, and his life. My father was not a headline. He was not a ringleader or a mastermind, as your story would have it. He was an innocent boy, an innocent man, who was good to his very bones, and who mattered. Words to describe how incredible of a human being, how amazing of a father he was will never be enough. I'll miss him for the rest of my life because of your tunnel vision. I thank God every day that I was able to experience a father's love that has no end, a love I can still feel to this day. I thank God for the sweet glimpses of him I see in my children. I may not see justice fully realized here on this earth for him, but I know that I'm not alone. There are countless other families carrying similar grief and unanswered questions, the same wounds left behind by an institution that refuses to correct itself. Unchecked power cannot continue. Tunnel vision cannot continue. Accountability must come. Reform is coming. It has to. And finally, the man who made me who I am today, my best friend, my daddy. Daddy, you have your name back. The world finally hears what you were trying to say all along. Daddy, I love you.
State. Before granting the state's motion to amend the dismissal based on actual innocence, I have a few very brief words. To the people that spoke today, to the men that were charged, your stories are no longer ones of accusation. They are ones of endurance, integrity, and vindication. The foundation of our criminal justice system rests upon principles that are both simple and profound. Fairness, due process, and the requirement that guilt be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. When those principles fail to protect the innocent, the responsibility of the court is not merely procedural, it is moral. Today's decision is not an act of generosity. It is an act of obligation. An obligation to the truth, an obligation to the rule of law, an obligation to the dignity of the individual. Let my rulings serve as what they are intended to be, a full and final declaration that the accusations against you are without legal or factual foundation. May this moment mark not only the end of proceedings, but the beginning of restoration, of reputation, of peace, and of the ordinary freedoms that should never be lightly disturbed. Never lightly be disturbed. However, there's another injustice in this case that I cannot remedy with the signing of my name, and that is the absence of justice for Amy, Eliza, Jennifer, and Sarah. The court is mindful that this case involves a profound tragedy for their families and loved ones, and nothing in today's ruling diminishes the gravity of their pain. The presumption of innocence that defines our system is not a formality, it is a promise. And today I hope that promise is reaffirmed. The record before this court establishes what the law now formally recognizes, that you are innocent. No ruling can restore the time taken from you. No judgment can fully remedy the burden that you have carried, but the court can and does state without qualification or hesitation that you are cleared and that your innocence is affirmed. And with that, I will sign each of the orders that the state has presented to me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Robert Springsteen, I am entering this order, adjudging and decreeing that the charges are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Michael Scott, it is hereby ordered, adjudged, and decreed that the charges against you are hereby dismissed with prejudice. And Mr. Forrest Wellborn, it is hereby ordered, adjudged, and decreed that the charges against you are dismissed with prejudice. And to the family of Maurice Pierce, it is hereby ordered, adjudged, and decreed that the charges against you are dismissed with prejudice. Attorneys and exonerees, I believe that concludes the proceedings for this morning. And the court is going to stand in recess, and the parties may be excused. And please go in peace.
press conference? I think like I want to talk to Sonora's dad. We need to get a camera on Sonora's dad right away. Yeah, maybe that, and then I need Zach on another camera. I want to get Dan's response. This is big time.
You will be with Zach.
Yeah, so Dan. I don't know what whichever.
Yeah, no, I'm down for whatever.
Okay, I just need some. They need to get on the other cameras.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's
Let's
go.
jump on.
So we're gonna focus on that.
Just to get like his after he was emotional what he thought in the end, and then come find me again. Okay. And then, but I first want to. They're gonna go to the press conference outside, so we'll just get Dan and we'll get.
All right, Bo, I got this camera still rolling in here, but I'm going to come out and grab the FX6. Great. All right.
Sorry, I know you're in the middle of something. Yeah. Well, we'll see you soon. Okay, bye. Okay.
And did hard parts happen? Are you out there?
Certain people should have been here lined up. Even if they didn't say anything, they could just sit there and be embarrassed. Yeah.
Hey, Beverly. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you again.
How's it going?
I'm just curious what you think about some of the testimony, kind of inviting tactics. What were you feeling? What was going through your mind as you were hearing them? You were in her thinking about that then, right? Yeah. I got her daughter as well. I was kind of having the same thing. Probably not. When you say that, I'm thinking of just like the way she talked about her father, how it or the failure of the institution of justice system. Fair enough. Sure. Yeah.
I'll say this. The actions that me and my company took tonight in the emergency ultimately helped solve the case. John and Mike ultimately, that needs to be done. They did not take any steps they took after the incident tonight.
What steps are you?
By not letting Andy take the body for the process at the scene. It was common standard practice. Leave a crime line. Pick them up and give them more crime. Yes, crime line. At the scene, in where it happened. What the
The bullet, yeah. That seems like the case seems stood up and
a lot more factual and more about physical response of what he did with
We can do it outside.
Who thought DNA? Yeah, I mean, without the case, without that evidence, Dan Jackson can't do what he does.
Right,
Years later.
so that's, you know, that's, they were,
What's your name, sir?
I'm done.
Hey! I thought it might be you, but we gotta grab coffee sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, for me, it's incredibly tight. All
Okay, let's try to clear that. Keep that lane open.
Camera in the black hat. Not stand there for somewhere else. Which way y'all want to look?
I think we're making the aisle there.
Okay. So this aisle needs to be clear for entrance and exits. We can't have the whole place blocked. That means y'all gotta move. Either kneel down or move.
That's all right.
Back there too. You gotta have a place for people to leave.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Jose Garza, and it is my privilege to serve as your district attorney. It is my sincere hope that the proceedings that have taken place today will bring long-awaited closure to every person who has been affected by the yogurt shop murders. It is my sincere hope that with this closure, we can begin to heal. I want to thank Austin Police Department Chief Davis for supporting this investigation. I want to thank her for not giving up and making sure that the truth saw the light, no matter how painful it was, nor how difficult the truth was to fathom. The evidence is clear. Robert Eugene Brashears committed the yogurt shop murders. I only regret that he is not alive so that he can be prosecuted and held accountable for those heinous crimes. To the families of Amy, Eliza, Sarah, and Jennifer, both those who were able to join us today, and to those that could not be here, we are so sorry if this journey has only amplified your grief. I hope that the certainty of the evidence will aid you in your path to closure and to healing. To Amy, Eliza, Sarah, and Jennifer, we are so sorry that we have failed you for so long. May you rest in peace knowing that the truth of that horrific night has been revealed. To Mr. Forrest Wellborn, on behalf of the Office of the Travis County District Attorney, I am sorry for what you have been through. You are innocent and you were wrongfully accused, and I am sorry for that. I hope that this process and any process that comes after affords you the fresh start that you deserve. Thank you for being here. To Kim and Marissa, where are you guys? I am so sorry that Maurice isn't here today. He is innocent and he was wrongfully accused. I hope that the truth can bring you some peace, and I hope that by our actions today we have cleared his name. To Mr. Springsteen and to Mr. Scott. Where's Mr. Scott? You were wrongfully accused and you are innocent. And I am so sorry for the role that our office played in that tragedy. I hope that this process and any process that comes after affords you the peace and the freedom that you deserve. I want to thank all of the council who have diligently and vigorously represented these men for so long. I want to thank their families who have believed and fought for their innocence. And I'd like to take a second to thank Trudy Strasburger and the entire District Attorney's Office team, particularly our Conviction Integrity Unit, that worked hard to make sure that this truth came to light, and who work hard every day to make sure that the truth comes to light for so many people wrongfully accused in our state. I'd like to welcome Mike Ware, the Executive Director of the Innocence Project, and I want to thank the Innocence Project not just for their work on this case, but for the work they do in the state of Texas and across the country every day to vigorously fight for innocence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Ware. I'm the executive director of the Innocence Project of Texas, and I had a whole lot of help on this case from my staff counsel, Jesse Freud and Chase Baumgardner, from co-counsel on this case, who y'all saw in action in the courtroom today, and I want to thank all of them. I also want to thank Judge Blasey for taking the time to hear this extremely important case. Her judicial finding that these 4 men are innocent and always have been innocent is a victory for justice. I also want to thank District Attorney Jose Garza. I want to thank the Austin Police Chief and the Austin Police Department, and particularly the Cold Case Unit, and of course Detective Dan Jackson, for everything they have done in their pursuit of true justice and to get us where we are today. In 1770, John Adams proclaimed that, quote, "Facts are stubborn things," unquote. The truth cannot be altered by convenient, false narratives. These innocent men, when they were boys, were manipulated by authorities in order to manufacture a false narrative that could be sold to juries and to the public. And it worked for a while. But that's now officially over. The stubborn facts and the truth have prevailed, as John Adams says. And we at the Innocence Project have seen this time and again when the wrong people are accused, wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, or worse, the actual perpetrator goes on to commit more violent crimes, victimizing more innocent good people. This has to stop. The actors and institutions whose misjudgments and bad decisions and bad practices took this case so far off the rails, as well as the institutions that allowed for and even encouraged their misjudgments and bad decisions, must be held accountable. And in holding those accountable, we intend to advocate for and push for reform all over the state of Texas, so that what happened here in Austin will not happen again, either here or anywhere else in the state. Thank you. We'll take questions.
Can you talk about what happens next in this process?
You know, I'm sure we'll have some. I'm sure we'll have some discussions about the restitution that these people are entitled to. It could possibly involve a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, and we'll just see. That remains to be seen. But we hope to have some talks with people who matter. We hope we can work some reforms in, and we need to talk about restitution for these folks.
Are we talking about civil lawsuits against the state, the county? What are we talking about?
Probably a civil lawsuit in federal court.
We have a couple more remarks. Is there somebody else who wants to speak? Is there anybody else?
Anyone else wanting to speak? No? Wilson?
Is this the final step for them? Is it finally over?
I have spoken out for years on behalf of not only Michael, my ex-husband, but on behalf of Robert and on behalf of Maurice and Forrest, demanding this day. What these men and our families have been put through should never have happened. Never. But let me be clear. We are not alone in what we face. There are hundreds of families across this state and this nation that may never see a day like this where their loved one is declared innocent. The system is not perfect. It is flawed.
And it must change, and it must change for the better. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we hear from either Mr. Scott or Mr. Wellborn. Let me ask that. Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Tony Diaz. I've met some of you over the years, and I'm glad that you're here today to hear the wonderful news. I have in my possession an original order signed by Judge Dana Blasey declaring Michael James Scott innocent, actual innocence with prejudice. He's been exonerated. And you know, there could be a lot of wailing and gnashing of the teeth and hatred, and there could be trembling and even vomiting from the fear that Michael has experienced, and these other boys that I know and personally witnessed experience. But I can tell you something, very simply. The only thing stronger than hate is love. And Mike Scott has nothing but love in his heart. And thank God for brave men and leaders like the District Attorney of Travis County, Jose Garza, and Michael Ware for the Innocence Project of Texas. Men of integrity and high values and morals. Mike Scott accepts the apology from the District Attorney of Travis County. And I can tell you this, we must learn from this and support organizations like the Innocence Project of Texas, because these things are still going on. We can't blind ourselves to that fact. As far as the future for Mike Scott and the questions that you posed about what he's going to do next, he's going to thank you all. Everybody in the community, Travis County, the state of Texas, all of the fine trial lawyers in the district attorney's office, the fine trial lawyers working with Michael Ware and the other defendants, Amber Farley and Steve Denson. And then he's going to move on. And there probably will be litigation if folks can't accept the responsibility in the proper places. But the challenge is ours as a community, and the challenge is ours in terms of our leadership as what will happen. The ball is in their court. But just think about it. 4,530 days in administrative segregation, solitary confinement. You get to go outside once every 23 hours for an hour. But there's no hate. Our blessings are sent out to all of the victims, the families of the girls that should not have happened. But here we are. So Mike Scott wishes us all as a community Godspeed. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Welborn, would you like to say something?
Any other questions?
I'll say something.
Please.
I'm Marissa Pierce. I'm Maurice Pierce's daughter. And I just want to say that his story is going to continue. He doesn't stop now. It'll live on through me. And what happened to him can't happen again. And I will make it my life's work to make sure that he's not forgotten and that it hopefully doesn't happen again.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
hook this one here.
Which one? Oh, sorry, man. I'll grab it for you. There we go.
Thank you.
You're
going, sir.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Who's that? Who is it?
Yeah, we got everybody.
Let's find the right relative. Who we go with?
That's where I wonder, every time I drive all the way to the station, maybe to drive home, have I saved any time? Yeah, I just don't know.
On your keyboard?
That was on.
I know the batteries are.
All right, where did this go? Oh, good grief.